This episode is brought to you by Marshalls, where you never have to compromise between quality and price. The buyers at Marshalls hustle hard, working to bring you great deals on brand name and designer pieces. Because Marshalls believes everyone deserves access to the good stuff. Visit a Marshalls store near you or shop online at marshalls.com.
A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
Electricast.
I feel like it was kind of a jip.
A what?
And I was blown away. I wasn't expecting to be so entertained.
I fell absolutely in love with it. I mean, every scene's good.
It moves like a freight train.
I am now a diehard fan, and I understand.
So I'd like to see if over the course of this conversation, we can convince Guy that Citizen Kane is not a jip.
Stick to your guns, Guy.
Welcome to episode 112 of Generation Film, where 2 guys from the 20th century select a classic movie to show a panel of young film lovers and see if it still plays for today's generation. I'm Mark Netter. I'm co-founder and CEO of Electricast Media. I'm an instructor at the Los Angeles Film School and a sometime filmmaker.
And I'm Grace Chapman. I'm a film student at the Los Angeles Film School in entertainment business, and I'm a film lover.
I'm Kylie LaRue. I'm a recent graduate of USC Film School, specializing in cinema media studies, and I would like to one day possibly be a film journalist.
Hi, I'm Guy Lewis, a student at the Los Angeles Film School, and I love movies.
Hi, I'm David Taussig. I am co-host of this podcast, and when I grow up, I would like to continue being co-host of this podcast.
This past week, we watched the first feature film directed by, co-written by, and starring then 25-year-old wonder kid Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. While a box office failure when released in 1941, it broke new ground in visual storytelling, has influenced filmmakers worldwide ever since, and for many decades, critics and filmmakers alike have placed it atop their best film of all time list. As a capper for our first season of Generation Film, it has interesting connections to some of the other movies that we've looked at. It has the cinematographer from Stagecoach, the composer from Psycho, who was released the same year as Meet John Doe, and it has the 2 lead actors from The Third Man. The story begins with wealthy newspaper and radio mogul Charles Foster Kane on his deathbed, uttering the word rosebud with his final breath. The rest of the film follows a reporter assigned to find the meaning of that mysterious word, hoping it unlocks some key to understanding this incredibly influential man. As the reporter interviews various people who were close to Kane, a fragmented picture begins to coalesce. But will we ever really find out what made this giant of a man tick? Now, for anyone here, was it your first time seeing Citizen Kane?
Nope.
No. Interesting. Grace, why don't you tell us about the first time you saw Citizen Kane and what this time was like?
The first time I watched it was in my high school film studies class, and I was blown away. I wasn't expecting to be so entertained by this old movie. But it was incredible, and I just remember this indescribable feeling of wonder, and I feel like that kind of started my love of not just film, but history, I guess. And then when I was watching it this time, I was still just as blown away and captivated and noticed much deeper meaning in it, and I can't wait to watch it again.
Oh, that's incredible. Kylie, what about you? When was the first time you saw it, and what was it like this time?
The first time I saw was my first semester in film studies in community college, and I actually did not like it. And I had been shown it every single semester all throughout the rest of my community college, almost every single USC film class. And I took that period as like a nap time or as I left. So I was like, no, not again. And this time I decided to give it the old college try post-grad. And I actually totally fell in love with it. It felt like the first time I'd ever watched it. And I am now a diehard fan, and I understand.
Yay!
What do you think flipped the switch for you?
I just don't think I was old enough to understand it and to really let the messages sink in. But I think now I get it. I understand what it meant for film. And I'm just in a headspace now where I can appreciate and empathize with him. And like, I opened my heart to it and I loved it.
Interesting. Guy, what about you?
The first time I saw it was 3 years ago in my film history class. Around that time, I was drinking the Kool-Aid on all movies, so I thought it was cool. But now I feel like it was kind of a jip.
A what?
Like I feel cheated.
jip?
Cheated a little bit, you know.
Oh, that's so interesting. So what made you feel cheated this time?
Not to get into the spoilers already, but the whole saying Rosebud at the death, and then at the end to find out what Rosebud was, did not pay off at all for me. It had zero payoff.
Really?
Interesting.
Not a payoff at all.
How about the fact, though, that right before we find out what Rosebud is, the guy who's been trying to find out what it is this whole time says, even if I were to find it, I'm sure it wouldn't mean anything. You can't explain a man's life by a word.
Yeah, but that kind of didn't help the case out at all.
I thought that made it so much more worth it because I'm like, I know something you guys don't know. And it's just this feeling of satisfaction because you finally learn what it is. And it's just such beautiful imagery to watch it burn.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about it. And for a spoiler alert for a film that's 82 years old, the last thing between Kane as a child being taken away from his mother and his father as well, but his father seems like an alcoholic, piece of shit, whereas his mother is someone he really loves. The last thing is the sled, and he does use it to hit the banker who's going to be taking him away.
It's kind of central. It comes up a lot when Kane's an old man. The banker asks him, what would you have liked to have been? And Kane says, I'd like to have been everything you hate, which is exactly the way he felt when he was, 6 years old and hit him with the sled.
So I'd like to see if over the course of this conversation, we can convince Guy that Citizen Kane is not a jip.
No, stick to your guns, Guy. No pressure.
Yeah, I don't feel any pressure. Good luck, guys. I'm rooting for you.
It took me 6 years to like it. So, Guy, you got some time.
David, what about you? I mean, since you're around my age over here, when did you first see Kane and what was your experience then and now? So I started becoming a film buff when I was around 9. And I wanted to see Citizen Kane. I started hearing, it's the greatest film ever made. Some critics said that. And even in New York, it was hard to find back then. You had to wait for it to get to the theater. And you know what? It did not get to the theater as much as stuff like Casablanca. You could see a Chaplin or a Bogart film all day long. So I waited and waited and waited. And by the time I was 12, I had to fly cross country to visit my grandfather. And I found out that they were going to show Citizen Kane on the airplane. And I was so excited, like, this is going to be great. And by the way, you probably don't know this. Back in those days, we're talking, I guess, 1971. The experience was not great for watching movies on airplanes.
Well, but also the way they did it. So literally, they had a print of the film in the plane, and it wound its way all the way around the airplane and went through everyone's viewer.
But these were viewers overhead, right?
Yeah, it was like the viewer was way up here. Like you had to go like this the whole time.
and it wasn't one per person. It was one per section.
Yeah, one per section. So you could be right underneath it, which is a drag, or you could be way, way behind it. Mm-hmm. So I remember sitting down. It was like 2 rows in front of me. Oh, good. This is going to be good. And then it turned out I was in the section that was showing the computer that wore tennis shoes. And they wouldn't let me move. And I was literally begging the stewardess, please, I gotta get in that other section when they show Citizen Kane. And they, no. So I sulked for 2 hours. But anyway,
child film nerd.
Yeah. So funny.
I did finally see it when I was about 15, I guess. It finally made it to the film archives or something. So I really loved it, but I couldn't. I had to wait for it to come around again. And I got to see it in college. And by then, I fell absolutely in love with it, mostly with this idea of what does it mean to try to find out what another person's life is? How do you even begin to try to look into the interior life of another human being? Can that be done?
Yeah. I've seen it a lot over the years, and I have it permanently on my DVR. So I sat down to watch it thinking, am I really going to be wowed? And my thought as it was going was, oh my God, I forgot how good it is.
Yeah.
I just really hadn't remembered how good it is. It moves like a freight train. It is not a slow, boring movie. And there's only a few scenes where the camera just sort of holds on. And usually it's Wells and Joseph Cotten doing a scene together where the camera holds for a while and lets them just act without a lot of cuts.
Actually, I noticed this time, I'd never noticed before, most of the scenes, 1, 2, maybe 3 shots.
Yep.
There's very little cutting, except there's a lot of montages.
I want to get into some things about the meaning of the movie because I think there's a few big questions I want to ask, but I always like asking favorite scenes. So, Guy, considering that you felt the movie a little less than the rest of us for this particular one, did you have a favorite scene this time around?
Yes. So it's the scene where him and his second wife are having an argument about the reviews for the play.
Yeah, the opera.
The opera, right. And I think her voice is really ridiculous, especially when he's like, you know, like, hey, who was it? You know, so the way she's screaming is, you know, it's sad, but it was kind of funny to me. I thought that was kind of funny. But the lighting and the shading in that scene where she's on her knees and he's standing over her and he was telling her that you're going to keep singing or whatever. And then she was completely, literally overshadowed by Charles Kane. Even though it was kind of on the nose, that was pretty brilliant use of lighting. And then the scene where his second wife leaves right before he wrecks that room, there's a doll that was on the bed that kind of looked like the actress. And I thought that was I thought that was neat. But like right after that scene, there's a cut scene where there's this parrot and it just goes, ah!
I loved that too.
Oh, I didn't love that. I was like, what was
really
that about? You know, I don't really understand why this parrot is in this transition, but you know.
I thought it set the tone for how he was feeling inside, and especially because he clearly can't express his emotions very well. He just buys his love pretty much. And that's why Susan was so upset with him. She's like, you never give me anything. And it's like, he gives you everything, but she meant like, you don't give me like your heart, like he's not vulnerable. But he can't because he's traumatized from having his childhood ruined. So it's just like the parrot is, or the bird, whatever kind of bird it is, was just like how he felt inside. He just wanted to scream. And I thought it was a really cool transition.
At the end of the scene, in the background, you hear this woman screaming her head off, presumably part of the party, but it's really clearly expressing what they're feeling inside.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a canary, like the canary's finally singing, like the truth is about to come out. I mean, I'm not very good with birds, but it might obviously be a parrot.
I think it's a cockatiel, but...
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I thought it was like, now the truth is coming out because the staff is now telling the story who owes him nothing after he dies.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't there birds at the very beginning, like sort of vultures?
Like crows or something.
Crows in front of Xanadu in the very first scene as we're slowly approaching past the no trespassing
Yeah,
sign.
and they say, oh, he just couldn't stop collecting things. And one of the people there says, oh, yeah, like a crow.
Oh. All right. Favorite scenes, Kylie?
When the second wife leaves, Susan, and then he starts to break everything, and you see tears form in his eyes for like the first time because he realizes that this is the second time where someone whose love he wanted he couldn't get, but they chose to leave and they chose to take control of their own lives, which he's never really been able to do. And when he breaks everything, everyone just stands and watches him, and he's so alone. No one goes to hug him. And he leaves, he walks away to the mirrors, and you see the vast, all-encompassing loneliness through this big hall, and all the copies of him in the mirror, just broken and alone and in the dark.
I really liked the scene before that when Susan's doing the jigsaw puzzles, and that room they're in is insane, the giant fireplace. We're kind of trying to put the puzzle of Kane's life together, so I thought that was a fun little parallel. And in the beginning, when the reporters are in the projector room and all the smoke is everywhere, it's just such an incredible shot. I gasped. I loved it.
Yeah, and a lot of voices, almost like a radio play or something for a little bit.
And I thought it was interesting that RK Radio produced it.
RKO Radio Pictures.
Yeah.
David, what about you? Were there any scenes that stood out for you this time?
Yeah, I mean, every scene's good. You start on this sign, right? It's like a steel sign that's been vandalized. It says no trespassing. And this is some command that'll be like right away violated by the press. Then you have this crazy, mysterious death scene partly shot through the broken glass of a snow globe. It looks like nothing else had ever been done before, for sure. And then something that's like, news on the march! And you get this like brilliant parody of a newsreel. It's got the twisted sort of syntax of newsreels in those days where everything's said kind of half backwards, and the bad editing and the old scratch film, which later on we see a lot of it perfectly pristine because we've gone back to the past when that was new, supposedly. And then like, oh, this film just stops abruptly, and there's all these cynical reporters, the most beautiful silhouettes you've ever seen, right? I mean, I just think it starts off with such a bang. And when you get to the end, right after his life goes literally up in smoke at the chimney, it's just totally symmetrical, goes back down the fence, and you end up back on that sign, same sign, no trespassing. And now you realize, well, it also means it's not that you mustn't, but it's also that you can't. You cannot enter into another person's world and understand it. I think what Guy points out is right. I mean, Rosebud is clearly false. It rings false, and it's meant to. I think the real meaning of the end is it's an impossible project. You'll never understand what drives a person like this.
Moving into Xanadu, that whole no trespassing, we make our way up there. It feels like an experimental movie.
It is. Did you notice that the window is always in the same spot in the frame? It's always at 1 o'clock. Everything else moves, but the window that we're going to head towards is always right there. It's like in the exact same spot in the frame.
Smart. But then when you're actually in with Kane and you see his lips through the snow globe, I believe, right?
It's so weird. You don't even know what you're seeing.
You know, and he's just Rosebud, and it's just big. It's huge. It's an incredibly famous shot. And I feel like I'm in an experimental movie. Totally. And then I feel like I'm in a religious movie. I feel like I'm in like a Bergman movie for a few moments where the nurse comes in. You see the windows in the room that look almost like church windows. And then you go to the news on the march thing, which tells us the whole story of the movie.
Yeah.
At the very beginning.
I love that whole newsreel thing because, yeah, right. I mean, there's so many great moments in it. One guy says he's a communist, and then the next guy says he's nothing but a fascist, right? And then he says, I am what I've always been and always will be, an American. And there's this really sappy music that works. It makes you feel it. And it's excused because it's not music of this movie. It's music that the stupid documentary newsreel guys did. So it's okay. And I think it's kind of brilliant in that way.
And the name of the movie, I think on one of the scripts, the earlier drafts, it was American.
I heard that. And that was sort of a jab at William Randolph Hearst because he had a lot of papers called like the Chicago American or something like that.
Andalusian dog.
So my favorite scene in the movie, it's this incredible shot where the photo of all the reporters from the Chronicle turns into a photo session of them all sitting in the same positions, but now they're at Kane's paper. The flashbulb goes off, they stand up, and it's a party. And everyone is having a great time. They're worshiping Charles Foster Kane, this magnificent narcissism. Orson Welles is so charismatic in the scene. The dancing girls come in. By the way, Wolf of Wall Street, perhaps? Anybody? It's the height. And there's all these hints that things are going to go wrong afterwards. He tries to kiss one of the dancers, little sexual harassment, but it's this incredible moment and it's filled with such energy and brio and all that. And then he goes off to Europe and leaves the paper. And when he comes back, it's just not the same for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And the rest of the movie is kind of the slide. And for some reason, you're still interested through the whole slide.
It's the happiest scene in the movie for sure.
In that scene too, what I really loved was how many little itty bitty motifs and symbols they were putting in it. But when Bernstein is kind of being the yes man of Kane, Leland literally starts blowing smoke in his face. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's blowing smoke. Here we go. Like Leland sees the charade. And I feel like smoke is such a repeating motif in the entire film, from Rosebud to the smoke and mirrors of the newsreel to him blowing smoke. And then it's just like, it's something that I just noticed this time, but I thought it was very telling of and foreshadowing of Leland and Bernstein and their roles in Kane's life in the future.
It's an interesting movie to talk about favorite characters. Mine is always Bernstein because I think he's the guy who ends up having the best life of everybody in the movie. And he's also kind of smart. And of course, because he's Jewish, it makes me very happy. He's the one who even says maybe Rosebud was something he lost. So to me, Bernstein has the best beat on what's going on and is living the best life of everybody.
He's the smartest guy. And I got to say, he was never my favorite character before, but I've seen it now 6 times. And as you age, you get more and more appreciation. I mean, it's amazing that Wells made this when he was like 25. He knows a lot about aging and about death. And now that I'm 64 and have lived through some of this stuff, it means more to me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a movie that changes as you get older. So could this movie be about anybody, the unknowability of any of us? Or is there something about it being about this particular type of wealthy, famous person?
The theme of the film could apply to anybody, but obviously the film would not be nearly as entertaining if it's about somebody that had an average, typical life. It's much more interesting to watch somebody that's trying to be president and is wildly narcissistic, and yet at the same time is crazy charming. So all those things make the film more entertaining. So it's a good character to do it about, but I think the theme applies to the life of any person.
I don't think this works as an everyman tale. I don't think that without him being a larger-than-life figure, you could hold any interest in this guy's life. I don't think we would care. But he was a millionaire, super rich person after the Great Depression.
And I think Orson Welles was pretty ahead of his time, because to me, it's about trauma. And that's a really trending topic nowadays. Like everyone's trying to heal their family's trauma. And back then, nobody was really talking about that. And I don't even know if that probably wasn't his point at all. But to me, that's like the core of the film, that you can have all this wealth and all these material items, but it's not going to make you a happy person. And a lot of people in America were struggling at that time, healing from the Depression. So they were yearning for that type of lifestyle.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
On top of building this fake volcano for months, I give my daughter Smarty Pants vitamins to support her brain health. So her science fair project sounds more like and less like. And while I may say it's not a competition, of course it's a f***ing competition. Choose Smarty Pants vitamins to support your kid's brain health and save the science fair. Shop on Amazon, smartypantsvitamins.com, or at Target today.
One of the things that's really fascinating about this movie is that the only time that we're ever with Kane in real time, right, where it's not somebody's memory or a newsreel, the only time is the very beginning when he says Rosebud and dies. And we really don't even get close to him then. We have the ultra close-up of his mouth. So that's as close as we're ever going to get. But we obviously don't trespass inside of it. We don't get all the way there. So taking what you were saying, Grace, and I'll start with you, and then anyone else can just jump in. To what degree do we feel that Kane gets his comeuppance? You know, boss Jim Geddes, who Kane has tried to ruin and has turned around and ruined Kane politically, says to him, you need to learn your lesson, and I have a feeling you're going to need to learn it a bunch of times. Now, by the end of the movie, Kane clearly has had some sort of defeat. So do you feel that there is a justice that plays out in this movie that is satisfying in that sense? Or are you kind of rooting for Kane to somehow succeed in ways that he doesn't in the movie?
I definitely am rooting for Kane in some ways, just because I just see a hurt little boy, but that shouldn't mean he shouldn't have any responsibility for his actions. I guess there is justice in him dying alone, but it is really sad. And I don't get any satisfaction from it.
And do you think that lack of satisfaction makes the movie feel more impactful to you?
Definitely. Yeah. If there was somebody there at his side, because I know it's like loosely based off of William Randolph Hearst, but he actually did have people around him when he died. His mistress stayed with him until the very end. So there are some differences.
Oh, yeah.
Damn it.
Oh.
No, Hearst was a happier man than Kane.
Mm.
He was a mean son of a bitch, but I think he was happy.
I saw such like a bright, awesome, cool, progressive man who just wanted to change the world. And the last thing he did was ever change himself. And I was rooting for that guy the whole time. And slowly and slowly, the things and the hate rotted in him from the inside out. And that's what made me sad, is that there was such good, and then the evil and the greed won.
I didn't feel that the way Kane's life ended is so sad as much as everyone else said. Sure, his second wife left, but how is that sadder than his son dying? You know,
that's really sad.
You know, that he could always see her again, or his first wife dying, you know what I'm saying? And she died thinking that he was cheating on her. And I don't know if they actually nailed that down, that they were cheating. I know that they were seeing each other without the wife knowing, which is, you know, some people consider that cheating, but it didn't say that they were sleeping together outright or she wasn't pregnant or anything like that. He just met her, thought she was interesting, and wanted to help her in her career. And that desire for him to be a nice guy.
That's all it was.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I would like to think that men in general are capable of doing nice things without.
For pretty ladies?
Yeah. Yeah.
Grace, so cynical.
I've done that. I've been nice to pretty
it's implied,
people.
I guess.
I don't know if it's implied that they slept together. I think it's implied that maybe they didn't, because she's kind of prudish. When he tries to close the door, she's like, no, you know, my landlady wouldn't approve.
But, you know, I've known of couples that have been in that situation where somebody basically has a kind of emotional and mental infidelity without it ever crossing over to the physical, but it still is momentous and kind of damaging.
True. I just figured for the time they just couldn't explicitly show that was happening. So I just figured they were.
Well, the fascinating thing is you have the super narcissistic man, and the woman that he's attracted to doesn't know who he is.
Yeah, she's so childlike or childish, I guess. And I feel like that's kind of why he's drawn to her too, because he was robbed of his, and here's this giggling pretty girl.
And then he tries to raise her up to like city opera singer.
Yeah, that's another thing too. He really saved this girl from obscurity, I think. Not that, you know, money fixes everything, and if you help a person rise into the social economic level or attain some amount of fame, that they owe you in some sort of way. But she really seemed ungrateful, you know, which
I kind of had the same thought.
Yeah, to me, that was why she was drunk and drinking when the reporters were showing up to ask her about Kane. Because I think she felt really, really guilty because she could have handled that situation better.
Thompson, the reporter, says, "It sounds like you feel sorry for him." And she says, "Sure I do. Don't you?" It's definitely a tragedy.
So why do we think this movie still resonates today? We know that the techniques are amazing. It's basically like a textbook of things that you can do with film that no one had ever put together all in one place like this before. But it's got to be something more than that for people to still want to see it.
Now, this movie still strikes a chord, I think. For me, it does.
What is it? Is it the universality of this particular rich guy story? Like, what is it? I'll start with Guy, because since Guy thought he was gypped watching the movie. Guy, why do you think people still watch this movie and talk about it?
Well, it's still like a clinic on how to make a movie. It's just really well done, and especially for the time and the technology of the era, they did leaps and bounds, in my opinion. It was a huge spectacle, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think that's why it carries on, you know, because of the spectacle.
There's something profound about the spectacle, though. You said it is profound in some way.
Although it's not a very expensive, had an average budget for the time.
Doesn't look like it, though.
No, it doesn't. I know he uses that money well, but he spent money on some things and others. You know, that set you mentioned with the gigantic fireplace. I mean, it's amazing, but if you look at it, it's just an empty soundstage with a gigantic fireplace. You know, that's it.
When I watched this movie, I was just like, I think I'd rather keep these problems and have my best friends around me who I trust, the people I love around me. And I'd rather live paycheck to paycheck sometimes than be rich and alone in a castle on the hill, just miserable and lonely and never really having love or satisfaction, because I can find satisfaction in the simple things. And I think that's why I like this movie, because it made me be, okay, I can struggle, but I would never trade my struggles for Charles's struggles ever.
Interesting.
I think it resonates still because of the media parallels. Even though our media today is so different, it's still very much sensationalized. And this is kind of where clickbait started before you could click. And it's just interesting to see where that all kind of started, with the yellow journalism and everything going on back then, and how it's evolved into just this awful mess that could possibly destroy our nation. So I think that has really kept it alive.
I think it was a mess that could have destroyed the nation then. Maybe it did somewhat. I mean, that guy started a war.
Yeah.
David, do you have a reason why this movie still enthralls?
Well, I think, first of all, just the feeling of inventiveness. I thought a lot about Beatles albums for some reason, because you look at a Beatles song and it's a good song, maybe a little quirky, and then there's all the skill that goes into it, the voices, the harmonies. That's something that very few bands could do. And then on top of that, the recording techniques that they got into,
which were advanced for the time.
Very advanced for their time. And you can feel that energy when you listen to those songs, that they're just inventing something new every time. They invent feedback, intentional feedback in recording. They use sound backwards and make it part of the song and all that. And this film has that feeling. It just feels like a young guy, and it is. It's a young guy who didn't know how to make a film, really, never directed a film before, comes in and just breaks all the rules. And there's a lot of creative energy in this film. So that's one thing. The other thing is, this is a really basic tragedy. The tragedy that this film describes is a tragedy we can all understand.
The way that we see Jedediah Leland when he's being interviewed, and the way that we see Susan Alexander when she's being interviewed, in both cases, these are ruined people in some fashion. So here's my thesis. For this kind of all-consuming, huge, powerful, narcissistic celebrity, that for those who are closest to it, all it leaves in its wake is ruin and loneliness.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree as well.
There are ways you can avoid that fate. Sense of humor and, charity and all these things that he has at the beginning of the film that he just isn't able to sustain.
To be a real giving person, not just be self-centered.
And he was a giving person at first, but life got to him.
Do you know the hashtag ETTD that Rick Wilson started, a Republican, but he's a never Trumper? It stands for everything Trump touches dies. And when you think about the wake of people that were in his cabinet that got thrown aside, like Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro, and they're about to go on trial next month. So, it's that same kind of thing. If you have this kind of celebrity where everybody knows you, everybody wants to be you, everybody wants something from you, this kind of celebrity is toxic. And I think the movie is way ahead of its time. There's plenty of movies that have celebrities in them from the 30s and 40s and 20s even, right? But I don't think any of them go to this length to show you the noir aspect of how dark it can be to be attached to one of these people.
Yeah, not until you get to something like All About Eve, you have some other films like that, but that's much later.
Yeah, Sunset Boulevard to some degree, a little bit. But here we've got someone who should be admired by all. He's an unbelievable person. He's incredible. And the people closest to him, his best friend from college and childhood, and his last wife, they're just ruined. And I think that's what's so painful and so dark and so compelling about the movie.
And Orson Welles, he was sort of like that in real life too, wasn't he? I don't know too much about him, but I heard he destroyed Rita Hayworth's life somehow. I don't know much about it.
They were married for a bit, and then he did Lady from Shanghai, which was a problem for her.
Mm-hmm.
Kane wasn't meant to be him, but there's a lot of Orson Welles in Kane too.
Just interesting to watch his life play out and see the parallels.
But, obviously, William Randolph Hearst killed the film. He wouldn't advertise in his papers, and he told theaters that if they showed it, that he wouldn't advertise any of their films in his papers, so they were afraid to show it. And so The film was in very few theaters. Where it showed, it did really well. It got 9 Oscar nominations. It was very well appreciated at its time. People saw it as a great film.
It only won one Oscar.
It only won one. It should have at least won another one for best makeup. Even now, I'm impressed by the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason it wasn't nominated for that, I think, is because the makeup guy was non-union. They weren't going to nominate a non-union guy. But there's this group desire, sort of canonize things and dub them. Okay, you are the greatest film of all time. And then to try to convince other people to accept that. Just what do you think about that whole thing?
I think it is really quite impossible to quantify it like that because it's so subjective. But I get why people say that about Citizen Kane, because from a filmmaking standpoint, at least, I think it may be the greatest film of all time. I haven't seen them all, but it really kind of set the blueprint for the rest of filmmaking history. But it is a little silly to call something the greatest film of all time. Maybe one of the greatest films of all time, they should say.
I think the good thing about 10 best lists is it starts conversations and arguments. And it also sometimes brings to light movies that somebody hasn't seen.
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen Citizen Kane now, but there's somebody out there who hasn't seen it. Maybe they'll pick up Citizen Kane now because we're creating our own canon, which goes to what I want to talk about later about the season that we've had here. So I think there is value to that. And I think that Kane just inspired so many filmmakers to think bigger and to break the rules. And I don't even think it happened the year that it came out. I think it was the next generation. It was the Scorseses, the Coppolas, the Lucas, the Spielberg. These are the guys who saw Citizen Kane and said, okay, now I'm going to do my thing and I'm going to be big and ambitious and crazy like this too.
Yeah, and actually the film gained its reputation in the late 50s, 60s, all that.
Kylie, you did some research on the making of.
Basically, Orson Welles at 24 got a picture deal with RKO, 2 pictures. He wanted to do Heart of Darkness or a mystery novel and do everything all by himself. And RKO was like, no way, give us something new. And you have to have a good crew behind you or else we're not going to let you do it. So that's how him and Mankiewicz, who the movie made, created the story together. And it wasn't until the 4th draft that it was Citizen Kane. And it went through a lot of rewrites here and there, even through shooting. But then most notably was a collaboration with Greg Toland, the cinematographer, where they just revolutionized film and created deep focus, having multiple planes all in focus, which I think is just incredible. And we owe a lot of what we see now to what Greg and Orson did together. And it took 82 days to shoot, which I think is pretty normal to what we see today-ish, around 3 months.
Well, his editor, Robert Wise, went on to win a couple Oscars for co-directing West Side Story and for Sound of Music. And the editing on this movie is just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Everything technical in this movie is unbelievable, I think.
Guy, you did a bit about the reception, right?
It grossed $260,000. It was the number 9th film of the year. That same year, the number 1 movie of that year was Sergeant York. Number 2 was Gone with the Wind that came out 2 years earlier than. Yeah, so the rewatches of Gone with the Wind beat the original releases of Citizen Kane.
Grace.
Yes, I did some research on the times, mostly the media landscape of the 1940s.
Oh, interesting.
So newspapers were the primary source of information, and radio, especially radio. It was the dominant medium, which I thought was really fascinating too, because Orson Welles was really prominent on the radio. I've actually been listening to some of his old radio broadcasts. I listened to the Most Dangerous Game today. It was really good. But movies and radio were just dominating, and media moguls were really big. William Randolph Hearst and also Joseph Pulitzer, they were head to head at that time. And yellow journalism was very prominent at this time, just sensationalizing everything. So this movie was very cutting edge and modern for the time, considering who were the prominent society leaders at that time.
David, do you want to give us a little background on Wunderkind Orson Welles?
Exactly. That's the word for him. Yeah, he was born in Wisconsin, 1915. His mother's a pianist, and he was considered a musical prodigy by the time he was 3. So he's always been a wunderkind. His parents separated when he was 4. Shades of Citizen Kane. His mother died 2 years later. So he was 6. And he stopped playing music. And he was put in an expensive boarding school. He started running the newspaper there, and he directed plays. And his teachers and classmates started using the term genius. When he turned 15, his father died of alcoholism. You mentioned the dad in Citizen Kane, seeming like an alcoholic. He went and painted at the Art Institute of Chicago. He did magic. He was a great magician. He just was so multi-talented. He could do almost anything that he really set his mind to, it seemed. He turned down a scholarship to Harvard so that he could travel in Europe and perform in plays. At 17, he came back from Europe, went to New York City, and very soon he was directing these expressionist plays, acting on the radio. He got gigs on The March of Time, which was the news show that he was parodying in Citizen Kane. So now we're at 1934, the height of the Depression. And over the next 2 years, he just became the absolute darling of New York theater. He did these ground-rattling plays. One of them was Macbeth with an all-black cast that was put on in Harlem. He did Faust on Broadway. And the only scenic element was just jets of lights, no sets. He did a very notorious pro-union musical called The Cradle Will Rock, which Congress tried to shut down. And there's a great story about that, but I don't want to digress too much.
There's a whole movie about it, too.
There's a whole movie, but right. Yeah. I mean, you could make a whole movie about every chapter of his life. These plays had been made for the WPA, which was a government program to employ artists during the Depression. But then Congress shut it down because they didn't like the left-wing bent and the pro-union bent. The Cradle Will Rock was about a steel workers union, and it just so happened the steel workers actually went on strike, and Congress was worried that because we were about to head to war, that we really needed to produce steel. So there were a lot of politics involved. He formed the Mercury Theater, success after success on the stage and on radio, and he had a young composer named Bernard Herrmann that did all the music for their radio shows. He was so busy, Orson Welles, they had to travel around Manhattan by ambulance to make all his appointments.
I heard
He
that.
found out there was no law against riding an ambulance if you weren't sick. So he just hired an ambulance to take him everywhere. And he never slept. He slept very little.
A lot of cigarettes.
So the height of all this was their production of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, which was intentionally done to try to panic people.
It was a radio production.
It was a radio production, but it was a fake documentary.
It was like a Halloween prank, wasn't it?
I guess you'd call it a prank. It was sort of more than that. It was like this real art piece. So what he did is they did a regular Mercury radio show, some story, and they said, oh, we interrupt this story to bring you, and they had little flashes of that something's happening and something's been cited. And then they'd go back to the program and then they interrupt again. Oh, so now, and then they'd have like eyewitness, and it ended with somebody going, oh my God, oh my God! Radio goes dead for like 2 minutes. And everyone is freaking out because there's never dead air on the radio. It's prime time.
Oh my God, it's The Sopranos.
So anyway, people panicked, being a big news story. He had to hold a news conference and pretend that he hadn't meant to panic anybody. That it was just, he never thought anybody would really be fooled by it. Oh, and he said that other people in other countries started imitating the idea, and they all ended up in jail. But he ended up with a Hollywood contract. And the way he got the best deal in Hollywood was RKO kept offering him contracts, and he kept saying no. And so he kept insisting on more and more creative control, and he didn't care about the money. He was making really good money already. So they kept having to give him more and more creative control until they had given him more creative control than any director had ever had in the history of Hollywood. And he's 24 and had never directed a real movie. So people in Hollywood were bitter about that and jealous, other directors particularly. After Kane was blacklisted, his career went into a tailspin. He continued being a successful actor and radio personality, but he really fell in love with making movies, and he found it very, very difficult. Could never get them financed.
Well, I don't think he ever had another movie that wasn't, at least a studio picture that wasn't recut by the studio.
Well, right.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I listened to this interview with him, and the interviewer asked him if he regretted having such success with his first film, and he said, no, I just regret not having that opportunity again to have so much creative control.
I mean, that's what he wanted more than anything, was just to be able to make things the way he wanted. So he went to Europe where he could try to do that. And he kind of had to go to Europe anyway, because he would have been blacklisted had he stayed in the US through the post-war period. Because, I mean, he was never a communist, but Hearst had slandered him, and J. Edgar Hoover was a very close friend of Hearst's.
And I heard another story that somebody was trying to frame him, and somebody else warned him that there was this minor
underage girl waiting in his hotel room.
In his hotel room, and somebody saved him from that. They warned him. They were going to get a picture.
It was Hearst.
And I also heard that he ate like 3 or 4 dinners a day.
Big appetites for women and for food.
He kind of ended up looking a little Kane-like when he got older,
He actually said in Citizen Kane, he's wearing as much makeup when he plays his own age as he is when he plays an old man. He made himself better looking. He was a real makeup master. Because you look at him, he was actually pudgy, and he had a very flat nose. And he actually added to his nose, and it made it look thinner.
Little contour.
By adding to the front of it. Yeah, and he knew how to create shadows with makeup.
I think he said he never did a movie where he didn't have a nose appliance of some sort.
Wow.
Right.
There's so much to say about Orson Welles, and I just don't think we have time to cover everything about it. I mean, the career was so long and interesting and fraught. I mean, in the future, I could see us doing Touch of Evil or something like that.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
When kids don't play, they grow up without creativity. They'll try to blend in and wear chinos, or worse, polyester chinos. Good thing Gushers, Fruit by the Foot, and Fruit Roll-Ups are made to be played with. You better be playing.
All right, I think it's time for us to start rating and talking about who we might be willing to recommend this to. Quick update on the rating system. 4 stars is the highest, top 10, 20, 30. 3.5 stars is an A, great movie, but perhaps not ready for that list of yours. 3 stars is an A-, essentially a great movie that might be flawed in some fashion. Then we get to the Bs, either a good B movie or a bad B movie, 2.5 stars or 2 stars, B+ or B-. And then you got the rest after that, which hopefully even Guy will not be going below 2 stars, but we'll see. Guy, I'm going to start with you.
I give this 1.5 stars. No, I'm just playing. I was going to give it 3 stars, but then listening to our criteria again, I don't think I could do that and be fair. It didn't really affect me personally. It wasn't life-changing, but it was still really big and important. So I'm going to give this 3.5 stars.
And would you recommend this to anyone?
Yes. Because everyone should watch every movie that's ever made. Okay. But yeah, I mean, it's, watch it. It's good.
I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. It really affected me, and I think it's just really influential, and I would recommend it to anybody.
Kylie, what about you?
Me 2 days ago would have given it a 3. But after this time, I would definitely give it a 4. Changed woman because of it, I would say. But yeah, I would recommend it to just 2 people, anyone who wants to go into film. It's a masterclass in it. But also just anyone, I think, who's struggling or who might not feel like they're in their best part of their life because of what they have or what they don't have. Anyone who wants to see how much they really want and what they're willing to sacrifice. Anyone struggling in that kind of existential period, I think they should watch that, and maybe they'll feel a little bit better about themselves.
That's beautiful. David.
I give it 4 stars because it's got all the elements for me. It's got somehow an epic feel, and the fact they did on an average budget is even more impressive. It's wildly inventive, and so it's a very special film. It's definitely a 4 star. It affected me a lot when I was younger, and every time I've watched it at a different age, it's had a different effect on me. I've seen new things in it. 6 viewings, I'm still seeing new things. It's very deep. It's a really beautiful film. I'd recommend it to anyone who wants to make films and anyone who's willing to watch a black and white film, who's interested in film history. Of course, you have to see it. Or just also is interested in deep thoughts, because I think there's a lot of food for thought in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to agree on the 4 stars for me. It is actually way up there in my list. I don't know if it's in the top 10 just because there's others that give me more pleasure here or there, but I'm always impressed by it every time I see it. I feel like as I get older, I do get more out of it. And I think it's a cautionary tale and is really powerful for that. Watch out what you worship, watch out how you behave in your own life. And the other thing about this storytelling, Roger Ebert, I once read that he said, the thing about Citizen Kane is no matter how hard you try and how many times you see it, it's incredibly hard to remember what scene happens after what scene and put the whole movie in order in your head. And, I'm getting close, I think. I'm almost there, but it is really tough. And it breaks linearity all the time, but you still know where you are in the story. And that has got to be like an incredible storytelling feat. So that's where I fall in it. Guy, how do we average out on this?
So it's 3.9 stars. So we could round it to 4. Curses, I'm foiled again.
And as far as recommending it, I agree with Guy. Anyone should see this. So I want to say a few things at the end of our season over here. And for David and myself, I think we're kind of amazed at how all this has gone. I'm incredibly appreciative to David for producing, and especially after we finish recording. David does a crazy amount of work, as does Marcus Campito, who has become our regular editor on this. Hopefully he will stay in the future. But I wanted to ask everybody here, each of you have a favorite movie of the ones that we have discussed and that you've been a part of?
I really liked the foreign film.
Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie?
Yeah. Oh, man. I can't wait to watch this movie again. It was really, 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 really mind-blowing, and it challenged the shit out of me. And I would have watched that movie if it was not for this podcast. And it is the movie that I'm most glad I watched, if that makes any sense.
Was there anything aside from that was your favorite thing about being a part of this first season of Generation Film?
A lot of the stuff that David gave us, he was like really director, knowledge heavy. I always thought the stuff that he was putting out was very interesting and pertinent, especially like the Charlie Chaplin information. It really upgraded my knowledge of directors a lot. I don't know, this is a cool atmosphere. Everyone on the panel are my peers. Well, most people were my peers from school. We got a chance to meet some new people, and they all were just movie smart and part of the conversations that I love to be in. I felt like I found my people a little bit more,
The Film Tribe. Grace, what about you? What was your favorite movie of the ones we've done this season?
I'm going to go with Midnight Cowboy, the first one we watched. That one really struck me aesthetically, and it really inspired me, and it inspired the story I'm writing right now. I stole the ending. So it just really, really opened my eyes, and I don't think I would have watched that without this podcast. Even though I'd heard of it, I just don't know if I would have come around to it. But definitely the very first one.
Well, it's funny. At the time you said that it was on your 10 best list, and it was crazy, like right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And was there anything other than that you learned about classic cinema as being a part of this that you didn't know before?
I guess just how interesting the production can be. I never really thought to look up those facts before. And now kind of every time after I watch a movie, I'm like, oh, I wonder what was going on during the production. And it's just fun to look that stuff up.
I think that'll be helpful in your future career.
Mm-hmm.
And Kylie, what about you? I know you came in a little bit late in the season, but did you have a favorite movie of the ones you've been a part of?
Yeah, it was actually Citizen Kane, because it's one that, like I said, I put it off for so long, and I thought I had such a concrete view of it. And I don't think if it wasn't for you guys and wanting to be a part of the conversation that I really gave it an honest watch. And I was able to finally feel like I'm like, oh, now I get it. Now I understand my peers a little bit more. And instead of being the cool outsider, I can be in on it with you guys. And being like the odd one in is much better.
And you had a lot of film study in your background, but did you learn anything about classic cinema being part of this that you didn't know before?
Well, yeah, the hard part was the last 5 years of my life have been only cinema studies. So I would say I learned a lot more niche facts about a lot of directors themselves, since I mainly focus on the films themselves and the analysis and the media around it. But I did love learning about like what Guy said for David, and then you just give me factoids about the person who I never really met. And it helps me get a better full-rounded picture on the more personal aspects of films.
And then what was your favorite thing about being a part of this?
It definitely was just being able to actually talk about the stuff that I write in my papers or think about. Like at UNC, it's very structured. You have your 11-page paper and your bibliography, and you'd hand it in. The teacher talks to you the whole time. So I think just to have it in conversation with people who like film, and I know I'm not being judged here, and to be able to talk about what I've dedicated the last 5 years of my life to and have such an open and safe place to talk about it, it was just so fun. And I so much look forward to this because this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it's so wonderful to even have the opportunities to do it.
Well, now you're on YouTube and now you're part of Generation Films. You have a reel now.
Yeah.
I wish Jake could be here today. He was with us at the start and he's incredible when he's on here. I loved having Olive on when we did Brazil and I think one other movie. I love having Christian on to talk about Full Metal Jacket and give us the Marine perspective of it. But I would say this exceeded my expectations as far as our conversations. The receptivity that everyone has shown, Grace, you falling in love with Midnight Cowboy, Guy watching Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie 3 times, and now you still want to see it again.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going down soon.
That's great.
Yeah, Kylie getting a whole new perspective on Citizen Kane. And I got to say, the moment when Jake told us that he fell in love with Stagecoach after never having seen a Western before in his life, and now is wearing Western clothing. I mean, it's just unbelievable to me. And so it really does what I wanted it to do. And so my favorite thing has been meeting up and hearing what all of you have to say. I love being able to throw out questions. I love that you guys rise to the challenge. I love that you guys are willing to throw down with your star rating at the end. I mean, all this stuff to me is really pleasurable. And I don't think there's another podcast that's doing what we're doing. And I'd like to take it bigger, but we can talk about that in the future.
Oh, the second season is going to be awesome. Trust me, it's going to be great.
I'll tell you the movie that we're starting with in a minute. But here's what I will say about my favorite movie. And I love all these movies. A lot of them are on my 10 best list, like Psycho and such. I got to go with The Third Man. It is what movies mean to me. Mystery, intrigue, satire, thriller, and these unbelievable performers. I mean, it's Orson Welles and Joseph Cotten, just like in Citizen Kane, except Welles wasn't directing. But to me, The Third Man is so rich, it's deep, but it is just really fun over and over again. So that's my word. All right, well, if you want to watch Citizen Kane, it is available to rent on Apple TV, Amazon, YouTube, Vudu, and often shows up on TCM and Max. Speaking of YouTube, that's where you can find Generation Film with episodes that have clips and stills in them. And it's also on pure audio wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like our show, please tell your friends and please rate and review the show. That helps it to be discovered by others. Generation Film is an Electrocast production. I'd like to thank our panelists, Grace Chapman, Guy Lewis, Kylie LaRue, as well as my co-host and our producer, David Tauzik. I'm an executive producer on this show, along with my partner at Electrocast, Peter Rafelson, and our editor is Marcus Campito. Now, we opened this season, our first, with 1969's Midnight Cowboy. So I'd like you to join us on our next episode when we'll begin our second season with a very different set of cowboys, also from 1969. This will be the groundbreaking Sam Peckinpah Western, The Wild Bunch. How will our new generation panelists react to what was at the time considered the most violent Hollywood movie ever made? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's here on Generation Film.
Electrocast.
Hey guys, it's your girl Yasia. I want to share some really exciting news with you. I just dropped my first ever single, Spell on You, off my upcoming debut EP, Devil's Room, on RM Records. It's simply devilicious. Check out Spell on You wherever you listen to music. Bye for now.
I never thought I'd fall in love like this. It's time to close the chapter, but I think I needed this.
You deserve better health care, and so do we all. Medicine in America is a podcast that shares real stories of patients and doctors reshaping the future, because the revolution in care isn't coming, it's already here. Real stories, real change, a better future for healthcare.
Electric acid.